So earlier, Rich, we talked about how when we go into video mode on most DSLRs, we lose the ability to actually view the image through the optical viewfinder.
Yep.
Instead, we're viewing the image on the camera's LCD on the back of the camera.
Yeah, like you're seeing here, the LCD panel is lit up on this camera when we went into live view mode. It's giving you a preview image, and this really grew out of consumer cameras where they didn't have that. If you look at a lot of point and shoots, they don't have optical viewfinders.
Nope.
They just have an LCD
They
panel.
don't have mirrors either, so they don't have
Correct.
this problem.
Right.
Right. So I find, when we're viewing in live view on the back of these cameras, there's one big problem. Even as these LCDs on the back of the cameras get higher resolution, the fact is that they're still pretty tiny and pretty small. And most of the time, we're viewing them from a little bit of a distance. So my problem with that is that everything tends to look, good on the back of these LCDs. And it's very difficult to judge things like focus, exposure, and so forth when you're using just the camera LCD.
Yeah, you and I were out shooting in Amsterdam once, and I came back and, I'd been shooting all day, and a good third of my footage was softer than I'd like.
But you didn't realize that at the time, though.
No, because I was looking at it, and it wasn't because of Amsterdam. It was because it was, just this little monitor makes everything look sharp and clean because it's so small. The more you shrink the image down, the more it looks in focus. You might have noticed this before when you're looking at thumbnails of photos at the Finder level or, zoom down in Bridge or Lightroom or Aperture. Oh, that looks pretty good. And then you blow it up full screen, you're like, oh, that's kind of soft. It's the exact same phenomenon.
So the first sort of line of defense that we have to when we're in live view, instead of just using the camera's LCD because of all the problems that we just discussed, the first thing that we can do is we can actually use a loop or an attached viewfinder like this one. This one is made by a company called Zacuto, but there's plenty of other ones on the market. And what this basically does is it simply attaches to a frame on the back of the camera. And this actually magnifies the view that I get on the camera LCD. So now instead of just viewing the LCD at its normal resolution or its normal magnification, I can look through this and I can see at a magnified value what's really going on with my image.
And it's also nice is it provides you a bit of stability.
Yep.
So for example,
another contact point.
It goes right up, to the eye, sort of taking the place and giving you another eye cup like the traditional viewfinder. And these loops will typically magnify the image 2.5 to 3 times, making it easier to see focus. And also judge exposure because you're not getting light pollution. If you just have the LCD panel on, you're getting such environmental light.
It can be very difficult to see what's going on,
Absolutely.
So then, the next thing after we have sort of this attached viewfinder and something that's been sort of a recent development in the world of DSLRs are these guys, EVFs.
Yeah, and what we have here is an electronic viewfinder, and it just attaches via the HDMI connection and runs out. And if you look at these by default, it seems like the screen is about the same size. You're like, well, what's the benefit? It's the same size screen. Well, this screen costs 4 times more than this screen.
It's much higher resolution.
It's kind of like the difference between the early iPhones and the later ones where they bumped up the pixel count. They tighten that up so it's
It's
just
a retina display, if you will.
Yeah, marketing term, but it really does matter. Not all screens are created the same. You look at the screen on a cheap consumer electronic device versus a high-res camera, and there's a huge difference in quality. So this is much tighter screen, better resolution, and as you're saying, these can attach too.
Yeah, and that's what I love about some of these electronic viewfinders is that you can attach a traditional loop or viewfinder to it. So now it's actually going to operate much more in a similar fashion to how a traditional viewfinder on a video camera would work. Right? You can look through this, and if you look at it physically, it looks like a viewfinder on a regular video camera.
Yeah, and then you could flip this up if you just want to see the screen or flip it back
client
down.
wants to come around and take a look at it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so your client germs don't get on your eye cup. You just flip, have a look. Yeah, so that works great, and this gives you certain benefits. And as you're noticing with the overlay here, you could see things like you actually have the ability to see audio meters and to see the camera information being displayed. So you're always looking at those key settings. You'll also find in the menu that they sometimes add other benefits. And so, for example, here, if I flip this up, and you can't see it because it doesn't send it out, but I have a whole menu setting. What you get is the ability to actually go in and see overlays. So as you step through some of those options there, you can get focus assist.
Different frame lines, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or exposure assist, where I can actually see little highlights showing me with the zebra stripes, oh, this is overexposed, you're getting near overexposed. So these add certain benefits.
Well, and then the last way, and you've already pointed to it a couple times, is to actually use an external field monitor like this little one. And there's a lot of companies, again, that are making this small HD, Marshall, as this Panasonic one we have here. And this has a couple benefits, right? First, we're viewing the image on a larger screen. Nothing saying that we have to view it on a, say, 5, 6, 7-inch screen. We could view this on a 50-inch screen if we wanted to. So they're great for being able to view the image in large groups. What client might be present on set or something like that. Typically, because they're bigger, it's going to be easier to judge things like exposure and focus. And the thing I really like about them is that most of the field monitors out there are adaptable to different types of video signal. And what I mean by that is that we can go HDMI into them. We could use, say, an HDMI to SDI converter. SDI, of course, is a professional level video signal path. And we can attach our cameras in different signal paths to these monitors to be able to view it.
And many times these professional monitors will also have built-in measuring tools, waveforms, vector scopes, so you could judge things like color and exposure. So it's a whole spectrum. I would say if I was out in the field running about, the first thing I would choose would be something like one of these loops.
Right.
Zacuto, Hoodman, lots of others make these. It's a simple addition. I like to call it the lens for the back of your camera. Before you buy another lens, buy the lens for the back of the camera so you can get that sharper image and judge, do you have proper exposure and focus?
And if you're in a more compact situation, but you want a little higher resolution, the EVFs represent a great solution. And then if you're in a more stable and not running gun situation, and you have a couple more hands on deck in your production, an external field monitor, either separately mounted like this, or even mounted to a rig, works well also.
Yep. If you're going to those external field monitors, you may find it useful to get an HDMI to SDI adapter, useful for the pro monitors, and many of the monitors specifically designed for DSLR workflow will be high-res monitors with HDMI input so you can connect directly.
So that's a little bit more about live view. Of course, live view is enabled when we go into video mode on these DSLR cameras and our optical viewfinder no longer really works. And of course, we've also discussed different ways of adapting live view. We can use a loop or a viewfinder, we can use an EVF, and we can also pipe the signal out to an external field monitor, all of which makes it much easier to judge things like focus and exposure.